Society's definition of keeping calm is a pathetic coping mechanism for the weak. It is a fragile attempt to survive a chaotic world by merely suppressing panic. But for the 1%, the architects of reality, keeping calm is not a defense mechanism. It is an offensive weapon. It is a calculated tactical protocol designed for absolute leverage. Welcome to the Asymmetric Edge. Today we are dismantling the fluffy, modern interpretation of Stoicism and reconstructing it into what it was always meant to be, a psychological armor used by the elite to become entirely untouchable. This is the masterclass on why the 1% never react. These are the 10 Stoic protocols for absolute control. Protocol 1. The locus of control and energy leakage. The masses hemorrhage power daily. They bleed cognitive energy into traffic jams, online arguments, the incompetence of coworkers, and the shifting of the economy. Every time you react emotionally to an external event, you are actively handing the remote control of your nervous system to a stranger. You are participating in a deficit transaction where you trade your focus for absolutely zero return on investment. The elite understand that reacting is a catastrophic energy leak. They operate strictly within their locus of control. If a variable cannot be altered by their direct physical action, it is immediately deleted from their cognitive dashboard. It ceases to exist. They do not get angry at the rain. They simply build a roof. Anger requires energy. Frustration requires energy. The 1% hoard their emotional capital with ruthless efficiency. Lock your internal state in a vault and throw away the code. Let the masses exhaust themselves screaming at the wall. You will use your energy to climb it. Protocol 2. Cognitive bandwidth preservation. Silence is widely misunderstood by the lower echelons. The weak seek silence to relax. The elite enforce silence to increase their processing power. Your brain has a finite amount of strictly limited cognitive bandwidth available each day. Every time you engage in a petty dispute, defend your ego, or react to a provocation, you are opening useless background applications that drain your battery. When you refuse to react, you create a vacuum. You preserve your bandwidth. This is an asymmetric advantage. While your opponent is flooded with cortisol, their vision narrowing through blinding emotion, your dashboard remains clear. You are operating at 100% capacity while they are crashing. This cognitive surplus allows you to analyze their weaknesses, calculate the exact trajectory of the situation, and execute the chess moves that they are too blind to notice. Non-reaction is not passive. It is the active preservation of lethal intelligence. Protocol 3. Dopamine starvation. Humans are biologically wired to react. Snapping back at an insult or proving someone wrong provides a cheap, instant hit of dopamine. The masses are addicted to this behavioral loop. They are slaves to their own biology, reacting as predictably as a machine to every stimulus. To elevate yourself to the 1%, you must weaponize dopamine starvation. You must consciously deny your primitive brain the cheap reward of having the last word. When someone disrespects you or a situation goes sideways, the urge to react will burn. Let it burn. Observe the urge like a scientist observing a rat in a maze, but do not act on it. By starving this biological impulse, you sever the strings that society uses to pull you. You cease to be a predictable organism and become a calculated anomaly. When you no longer crave the dopamine of validation or retaliation, you become impossible to manipulate. You become sovereign. Protocol 4. The anti-fragile framework. Society teaches you to be resilient, to weather the storm, to take the hit, and to return to your original shape. Resilience is a fundamentally flawed and defensive concept. It implies that the best you can hope for is to survive damage without breaking. The elite do not aim for resilience. They construct an anti-fragile framework. When you are anti-fragile, chaos does not just fail to break you, it actively makes you stronger. You do not just survive the attack. You metabolize the kinetic energy of the blow and use it to upgrade your own system. When a competitor attempts to undermine you, or a market crash wipes out your baseline, the masses panic and retreat. The 1% analyze the disruption to find the newly created inefficiencies and exploit them. They view adversity not as a tragedy, but as raw data. If you never react emotionally to destruction, you are the first one on the battlefield calm enough to pick up the weapons your enemies dropped in their panic. Chaos is not a threat. Chaos is the fuel of the elite. Protocol 5, the observer's detachment. The greatest illusion sold to the modern individual is that you must honor all your feelings. This is a recipe for manipulation. If your emotions dictate your actions, anyone who can trigger your emotions controls your actions. You are a puppet, and the world holds the strings. To achieve absolute control, you must execute the observer's detachment. This is the calculated practice of emotional dissociation. When a crisis hits, you do not fuse with the panic. You eject your consciousness from the immediate situation and view yourself from the ceiling. You look down at the chessboard. Anger, fear, and anxiety are treated strictly as biological alerts dashboard indicators, telling you that the system is under stress. They are data points, not directives. You read the data, you acknowledge the alert, and then you manually override the biological response with cold, calculated logic. When you look at an enemy trying to provoke you and see only a predictable set of biological variables trying to force an output, their power over you instantly drops to zero. Protocol 6, the temporal monopoly. The masses treat time as an infinite resource. They spend it freely on cheap entertainment, useless debates, and maintaining relationships with people who offer zero asymmetric value. They do this because they refuse to face the ultimate Stoic truth, the absolute and unapologetic finality of time. The elite operate with a temporal monopoly. They recognize that time is the only truly unrenewable asset, and they guard it with a level of violence that society mistakes for arrogance. Understanding the transitory nature of life is not a reason to be sad. It is the ultimate leverage. If everything ends, then tolerating incompetence, waiting for the perfect moment, or agonizing over someone else's opinion is a catastrophic waste of capital. By accepting that your time is aggressively finite, you develop a ruthless filter. You cut dead weight instantly. You stop explaining yourself to people who cannot comprehend your trajectory. You do not react, because reacting takes time, and your time is too expensive to spend on the insignificant. Protocol 7, the calibration of reality. Society equates acceptance with surrender. They believe accepting a terrible situation means giving up. This is a fatal miscalculation. For the elite, acceptance has nothing to do with emotion. It is the cold, calculated process of reality calibration. The masses spend their energy fighting the reality of a situation. They whine about how things should be. They argue with facts, clinging to their delusions because reality is too harsh. This cognitive dissonance makes them blind and vulnerable. The 1% do not argue with the terrain. They simply update their map. If a business partner betrays them, or a system collapses, they do not waste a single second wishing it hadn't happened. They instantly calibrate to the new, brutal reality. You cannot conquer an environment if you refuse to acknowledge its true shape. By accepting the unvarnished truth instantly and without emotional resistance, you position yourself to strike while everyone else is still busy complaining about the unfairness of the game. Protocol 8, the pragmatism of integrity. Modern culture views virtue, traits like discipline, honesty, and consistency, as moral high grounds meant to win social approval. The Stoics and the modern elite view integrity entirely differently. To them, integrity is not a moral obligation. It is a structural defense mechanism. It is pure pragmatism. Consider the act of lying or operating with a hidden agenda. It requires constant cognitive maintenance. You must remember the lie, calculate who knows what, and constantly look over your shoulder. It is an immense drain on your mental RAM. Furthermore, if you lack discipline, you have a price. You can be bribed with comfort, distracted by pleasure, or manipulated by your own vices. The elite operate with unyielding integrity because it makes them unblackmailable. When your actions are strictly aligned with your internal code, no one holds leverage over you. You do not react to threats because your architecture is solid. Integrity is the ultimate armor of the sovereign mind. Protocol 9, the Asset Inventory Protocol. The self-help industry peddles gratitude as a warm, fuzzy feeling designed to make you feel better about being mediocre. They tell you to be thankful for what you have so you stop striving for more. The elite reject this passive sedation. They replace gratitude with the Asset Inventory Protocol. When you perform an asset inventory, you are not feeling thankful in a soft, emotional sense. You are conducting a ruthless audit of the leverage you currently possess. You recognize the strength of your intact mind, the functionality of your body, the capital you have accumulated, and the freedom of your silence. The masses are paralyzed by what they lack, staring endlessly at the gap between themselves and their desires. The 1% focus entirely on the weapons already in their arsenal, figuring out how to deploy them with maximum lethality. This constant awareness of your own leverage eliminates fear and anxiety. You cannot be intimidated when you know exactly how dangerous you are. Protocol 10. Continuous data acquisition. The masses view learning as a chore, something you do in school, and then you graduate into a finished product. When they are proven wrong, their ego shatters. They react with defensiveness, anger, and denial because they tie their identity to being right. The elite operate on a completely different paradigm. They view themselves not as finished products, but as algorithms in a state of perpetual beta. They do not learn and grow in the soft self-help sense. They execute a protocol of continuous data acquisition. For the 1%, an intellectual defeat or a failed strategy is not an insult to their ego. It is simply a bug report. It is raw data indicating a flaw in their model of the world. Society wants you reactive. They want you distracted, emotional, and predictable. An emotional population is a profitable population. A reactive mind is a slave to the algorithm, to the news cycle, and to the agendas of lesser men. The 10 protocols you have just absorbed are not philosophy. They are the source code for absolute sovereignty. Eliminate energy leaks. Preserve your bandwidth. Starve your dopamine. Build an anti-fragile framework. Detach as the observer. Guard your temporal monopoly. Calibrate instantly to reality. Weaponize your integrity. Audit your leverage. Acquire data relentlessly. Listen to this masterclass again. Let the 432 Hz frequency anchor these directives into your subconscious. Play it while you work. Play it while you build in silence. If this level of truth offends you, return to the masses. But if you are ready to stop reacting and start architecting your reality, subscribe to the Asymmetric Edge, cut the dead weight, protect your bandwidth, and never ever break.